The Galactic Council chamber stretched across 3 miles of polished crystal floor. Representatives from 200 species gathered in concentric circles, each ring representing status and military power. The Draconair Empire occupied the innermost ring, their massive reptilian forms draped in armor that had never known defeat. Behind them sat the Tellian Confederacy, then the Varani Collective, and so on outward until the circles reached the outer walls. Humans sat in the very last row. Commander Wraith of the Draconair Empire found this arrangement deeply disturbing. His scales rippled with confusion as he watched the human delegation settle into their distant seats without protest or shame. 7 feet of pure muscle and battle-scarred hide, Wraith had crushed 17 rebellions and personally dueled 43 enemy champions. Nothing in the galaxy confused him. Until now. "Explain this to me again," he growled to his aide, a smaller Draconair named Shen who managed diplomatic files. Shen pulled up holographic records. "The humans have occupied the rear positions for 200 years, Commander, since their admission to the Council, but their military record shows victories against the hive swarms. They defeated the Silicon Collective when 3 other species failed. They held the barrier worlds against impossible odds." Wraith's claws scraped against his datapad. "Why do warriors of such capability shame themselves with coward positions?" "The Council has asked this question many times, sir. The humans simply say it is their preference." Preference. The word tasted wrong in Wraith's mouth. Warriors did not prefer weakness. Champions did not choose invisibility. Something about humanity made no sense, and Wraith had built his reputation on understanding enemies and allies alike. The council session began with the usual territorial disputes and trade negotiations. Wraith barely listened. His eyes kept drifting to the back row where 5 human representatives sat quietly. They took notes. They listened. They spoke only when directly addressed, and even then with brevity that bordered on dismissive. Admiral Patricia Hayes led the human delegation. Her hair had gone silver, and her face carried lines that spoke of long years in space. She wore a simple uniform with minimal decorations, nothing like the elaborate displays of honor that other species favored. When she did speak, other species leaned forward to hear her soft voice. "We support the motion," Hayes said during a vote on fleet positioning near the outer sectors. "Our vessels will take support roles as needed." Support roles. Again, the humans volunteered for positions that glory-seeking species avoided. After the session ended, Wraith approached the overseer, a floating jellyfish-like creature named Milren, who managed council protocols. "I request assignment to study human military doctrine," Wraith announced. Milren's tentacles curled with surprise. "The Draconair Empire wishes to learn from humans. This is unprecedented, not to learn, to understand. My Emperor demands I investigate why our allies persist in displaying weakness. It reflects poorly on the Council's strength. The humans have agreed to such requests before. They are remarkably open about their methods." Milren accessed records with a gesture. "I will arrange for you to embed with their border fleet. Perhaps a few months among them will satisfy your curiosity." Wraith doubted months would be necessary. He expected to find cowardice dressed in diplomatic language. He expected to discover that human victories came from luck or overwhelming numbers. He expected confirmation that their rear position preference stemmed from deep cultural shame or fear. 3 days later, Wraith stood in a docking bay waiting for the human transport. He carried minimal gear, just weapons and basic supplies. A Draconair warrior needed nothing else. The transport arrived with none of the fanfare Draconair vessels demanded. It simply appeared, docked efficiently, and extended a boarding ramp. A human in a simple flight suit greeted him. "Commander Wraith, I'm Lieutenant Rice. Welcome aboard. Admiral Hayes sends her regards and looks forward to meeting you at the fleet." Rice stood barely 6 feet tall, thin by Draconair standards, with no visible weapons or armor. Yet she moved with confidence as she led Wraith through the transport's narrow corridors. "Small ship," Wraith observed, his bulk barely fitting through doorways designed for human proportions. "We prefer efficiency over size for transport runs," Rice replied cheerfully. "The crew quarters are at the back. I'll show you to your room, at the back." Of course, the quarters were cramped but functional. Wraith settled his equipment and joined Rice in what humans called the common area, a small space with basic seating and food preparation facilities. "We'll reach the fleet in about 6 hours," Rice explained. You're welcome to move around the ship, though we ask you avoid the engine room without escort. Safety protocols. Where is the command center? Wraith asked. Rice pointed forward. Flight deck is up front. Usually just 2 pilots on duty for routine runs. And defense stations? We have point defense turrets, but they're automated for transport duty. Most of the crew is in the back, handling logistics and passenger comfort. Wraith's confusion deepened. The humans put their crew in the most vulnerable position, far from weapons and command. Any competent attacker would cripple the engines first, trapping everyone in the rear sections. He said as much to Rice. She smiled, an expression Wraith had learned meant humans found something amusing. You're not wrong, Commander, but transport ships aren't meant for combat. If we're in a fight, something has already gone very wrong. Our job is to get people from point A to point B safely and comfortably. By hiding them in the back? By positioning them where they're least likely to be affected by maneuvering, where life support is most stable, and where evacuation pods have the best launch vectors. Rice pulled up a schematic. See? Engine compartment acts as a buffer against forward attacks. Command deck can be sealed off if compromised. Passenger areas have redundant systems and multiple escape routes. Wraith studied the design. It was not cowardice. It was calculation. The humans had designed their entire ship around the assumption of failure, around the possibility of disaster. They planned for defeat before considering victory. This seems pessimistic, he said finally. Rice shrugged. We call it realistic. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. That's pretty much humanity's motto. The journey to the fleet continued without incident. Wraith spent the time reviewing human military records, searching for patterns that might explain their bizarre cultural choices. He found courage in abundance. Human soldiers held positions long past when other species would retreat. Human medics ran into fire to save wounded. Human engineers stayed at their posts during catastrophic failures. But always, humans positioned themselves at the back of formations. Support roles. Rear guard. Reserve positions. When the transport finally approached the human fleet, Wraith got his first look at their vessels in formation. 12 ships of various classes floated in a defensive pattern near the border zone, and true to form, the flagship positioned itself behind the screening elements. Welcome to Border Fleet 7, Rice announced as the transport approached the UHSV Vigilant. Admiral Hayes commands from the Vigilant. She's looking forward to your visit, Commander. Wraith stared at the fleet arrangement, his mind churning with questions that had no answers yet. Humans fought like demons but positioned like cowards. They won battles but refused glory. They demonstrated courage but chose invisibility. Somewhere in this contradiction lay a truth the galaxy had missed for 2 centuries. Wraith intended to find it. The airlock opened with a hiss that seemed too quiet for a military vessel. Wraith had expected ceremony, guards at attention, perhaps a formal inspection. Instead, a single human officer waited on the other side, datapad in hand and a relaxed posture that would have earned a Draconeer soldier 50 lashes. Commander Wraith, welcome aboard the Vigilant. I'm Captain Dan Foster. The human extended his hand in their strange greeting ritual. Wraith gripped the offered hand carefully, aware his strength could crush human bones. Foster's grip was firm despite his species' fragility. His face showed age, lines cutting deep around his eyes and mouth. Gray threaded through his dark hair. Your ship is smaller than I expected for a flagship, Wraith observed as Foster led him through corridors barely wide enough for the Draconeer's broad shoulders. The Vigilant's a frigate-class vessel. We don't use the term flagship the way other species do. Admiral Hayes coordinates the fleet, but she doesn't need the biggest ship to do it. Foster navigated the tight spaces with practiced ease. We find smaller vessels more versatile for border patrol work. They passed crew members who nodded respectfully but continued their tasks without stopping. No formal protocols, no rigid hierarchies visible in their interactions. A young woman in engineering coveralls laughed at something her companion said. 2 men argued cheerfully about engine efficiency ratios while carrying equipment. Your crew seems undisciplined, Wraith said, trying to keep judgment from his tone. Foster glanced back with that human smile. They know their jobs. We don't require constant displays of military bearing outside of combat situations. Keeps morale higher. The tour continued through the ship's various sections. Medical Bay occupied a central position with thick bulkheads and redundant power systems. Engineering sprawled across the aft sections, engines humming with contained power. Crew quarters lined the sides and rear, small but efficiently designed. You put your people in the back of the ship, Wraith noted. Away from command, away from weapons. Close to escape pods near the most heavily shielded areas with multiple evacuation routes, Foster countered. In a crisis, getting crew to safety matters more than keeping them near a command station that might be destroyed anyway. There it was again. That assumption of failure, that planning for disaster. Wraith's people planned for victory, designed ships around the expectation of triumph. Humans designed everything around the assumption that catastrophe was always one mistake away. Foster showed him to guest quarters, larger than standard crew spaces, but still cramped by Draconer standards. Get settled. We run evening drills at 1900 hours. You're welcome to observe. The drills proved even more confusing than the ship's layout. Wraith watched from the command deck as Foster ran his crew through scenarios. But instead of practicing weapons targeting or attack maneuvers, the humans focused on damage control, evacuation procedures, and rescue operations. Fire in Section 7, Foster announced calmly. Bulkheads compromised, crew trapped. The response was immediate but not frantic. Damage control teams moved with practiced efficiency. Medical personnel positioned themselves at likely evacuation points. Engineering rerouted power to containment fields. Within minutes, the simulated crew was rescued and the simulated fire contained. Again, Foster said. This time, assume primary medical bay is destroyed. They ran the drill again. Then again with different variables. Hull breach, power failure, contamination. Each scenario focused not on fighting but on survival, on rescuing people, on maintaining operations despite catastrophic setbacks. Do you not practice combat drills? Wraith asked after the session ended. We do, but we spend more time on this. Any crew can learn to shoot straight and follow attack patterns. It takes real training to save lives when everything's falling apart. Foster dismissed the crew with a nod. In our experience, Commander, battles are won more often by the side that can keep fighting despite damage than by the side that strikes first. That night, Wraith reviewed human combat records again, looking for evidence of Foster's philosophy. He found it everywhere once he knew what to seek. Human victories came not from superior firepower or aggressive tactics, but from their ability to absorb damage, recover from setbacks, and continue operations when other species would have surrendered or fled. The next morning brought excitement. Alarms sounded gentle but urgent. Foster appeared on internal communications. All hands, we've received a distress call from a civilian convoy under pirate attack. We're responding along with 2 Tellian cruisers. ETA 20 minutes. This is not a drill. Wraith rushed to the command deck, his warrior instincts surging. Finally, he would see humans in actual combat. The Vigilant accelerated smoothly, joining formation with the 2 Tellian vessels. As expected, the Tellian cruisers took forward positions, their massive weapons arrays powering up. The Vigilant settled into a rear support position. Why do you not take the lead? Wraith demanded. Your ship is faster, more maneuverable. Foster studied his tactical displays without looking up. The Tellians have better frontal armor and heavier guns. They're designed for direct assault. We're better suited for support and pursuit. The convoy appeared on sensors. 3 cargo haulers scattered and trying to escape 5 pirate raiders. The Tellian cruisers charged forward with the glory-seeking aggression Wraith expected. Their weapons lit up space, cutting into the nearest pirate vessel. The pirates scattered, 2 breaking to engage the Tellians while 3 pursued the fleeing cargo ships. They're trying to grab what they can before we drive them off, Foster muttered. He opened a channel. Tellian Commander, we're breaking formation to protect the cargo vessels. Confirmed. We'll handle the main force. The Vigilant banked hard, accelerating past the Tellian ships toward the fleeing convoy. Wraith gripped his console as the frigate's engines pushed beyond normal operational limits. Weapons range in 30 seconds, the tactical officer announced. Don't fire yet. Get between them and the cargo ships. Foster's voice remained calm despite the chaos of approaching combat. The Vigilant slid into position, placing itself directly in the pirate's path. Now Wraith understood. The human ship had positioned itself as a shield, taking the most dangerous spot to protect civilians. Now, Foster said quietly, the Vigilant's weapons were not the massive cannons Draconer or Tellian vessels carried. Instead, precise targeting lasers and small railguns struck with surgical accuracy. 1 pirate lost engines, another spun away, control systems damaged. The 3rd tried to fight back. Brace for impact, Foster ordered. The pirates' weapons struck the Vigilant's forward shields, energy cascading across protective barriers. Alarm sounded as power fluctuated. Damage report, Foster snapped. Forward shields at 60%. No hull damage. No casualties. Return fire. Disable, don't destroy. More precise shots. The pirate vessel went dark. All systems offline, but hull intact. Behind them, the Tellian cruisers had destroyed one pirate and driven off the other. The immediate threat had ended. Medical teams, prepare for possible casualties on the disabled vessels. Engineering, I want damage assessments on all pirate ships. If any crew survived, we're obligated to render aid. Wraith stared at Foster in disbelief. You plan to help the pirates? We plan to help anyone who needs it. They're disabled and helpless. That makes them our responsibility. Foster finally looked at Wraith. We fight when we must, Commander. But we're not here for glory or revenge. We're here to protect people and maintain order. That includes making sure everyone survives if possible. The aftermath took hours. The Vigilance medical teams transported to damaged pirate vessels, treating injured raiders alongside the human crew. Engineers helped stabilize the disabled ships. The cargo convoy was escorted to safety. Through it all, the Vigilant remained at the back of the formation, coordinating rescue efforts, managing resources, ensuring everyone from civilians to captured pirates received proper care. Wraith watched as Chief Medical Officer James Rothwell worked tirelessly, moving from patient to patient without distinguishing between friendly cargo crews and enemy pirates. Why do you save your enemies? Wraith asked him during a brief pause. Rothwell looked up, exhausted but focused. Because someone has to, Commander. Because today they're my enemies, but tomorrow they might be reformed citizens. Because even if they're irredeemable, they're still living beings who deserve medical care. He returned to his patient. And because if I don't help them, what makes me different from them? That answer stayed with Wraith long after the crisis ended, and normal patrol operations resumed. 2 weeks passed in what humans called routine patrol. Wraith found nothing routine about it. Every day brought new observations that challenged his understanding of military operations. Engineer Nina Okafor treated the ship's engines like living creatures, speaking to them softly while performing maintenance. She worked longer hours than any crew member, often sleeping in engineering when critical systems needed monitoring. Her dedication bordered on obsession. Why do you care so much? Wraith asked one evening, finding her calibrating power flow matrices at midnight. Nina looked up from her work, grease smudged across her cheek. Because if these engines fail, everyone on this ship dies. Because my job isn't just keeping us moving, it's keeping us alive. She patted the bulkhead affectionately. These engines are the heart of the Vigilant. I'm their doctor. Would you ask a doctor why they care about their patient's heart? The logic was sound but strange. Draconeer warriors maintained their weapons with care but never affection. Tools served purpose, nothing more. The morning of the 16th day, everything changed. Wraith was reviewing tactical data when proximity alarms shrieked across every speaker. The sound was different from the previous alert, more urgent, more desperate. Foster burst onto the command deck, uniform half-fastened. Report. Multiple distress signals from the patrol zone. The Tellian cruisers that helped us before, they're under heavy attack. Unknown hostiles, at least 15 vessels. The sensor officer's hands shook slightly. Sir, the energy signatures don't match any known pirate configuration. These are military-grade warships. Sound general quarters. Get me Admiral Hayes. Helm, set intercept course, maximum speed. Foster's calm had transformed into focused intensity. The Vigilant leaped forward. Within minutes, 4 other human vessels joined formation, all converging on the distress signals. Admiral Hayes appeared on the main display, her silver hair pulled back severely. All ships, this is not a rescue operation. This is a combat engagement. Unknown hostiles have superior numbers and firepower. Our objective is to extract the Tellian survivors and withdraw to defensible positions. Understood, Admiral. Vigilant moving to intercept. Foster cut the channel and turned to his crew. You heard the Admiral. We're not here to win, we're here to get our allies out alive. Medical teams, prepare for mass casualties. Engineering, I need every bit of speed you can give me. Wraith's combat experience screamed warnings. 5 light vessels against 15 heavy warships was suicide. The Draconeer would never accept such odds without massive reinforcements. You should wait for additional forces, he advised. Foster shook his head. The Tellians don't have time. Those ships will be scrapped in minutes if we don't intervene now. The battle scene appeared on visual displays and Wraith's blood went cold. The two Tellian cruisers that had fought so bravely against pirates now tumbled through space, hulls torn open, atmosphere venting in frozen clouds. Enemy vessels circled like predators, firing methodically into the dying ships. "They're executing them," Wraith whispered. "Pirates might disable and rob, but this was systematic destruction. Not if we have anything to say about it." Foster opened fleet-wide communications. "All ships Delta formation. We go in fast, grab whoever we can, and get out faster. No heroics, no revenge strikes. This is a rescue, nothing more." The 5 human ships spread into a wedge pattern, but not the aggressive attack formation Wraith expected. Instead, they positioned to create a defensive screen, with medical vessels at the rear of their formation. The enemy noticed them immediately. 5 ships broke off from the Tellian cruisers to intercept. "Here they come." Point defense online. "Shields to maximum forward." Foster gripped his command chair. "Remember, we don't need to win. We just need to buy time." The enemy opened fire at extreme range. Their weapons were powerful, more advanced than anything Wraith had seen. Energy beams that should have scattered across distance instead struck with devastating focus. The lead human vessel, a destroyer called the Steadfast, took the first hits. Shields flared and died. Hull armor sublimated under the assault. "Steadfast is crippled," the communications officer shouted. "Delta 2 and Delta 3 cover the Steadfast. Delta 4, Delta 5 with me. We're getting those Tellians." Foster's orders came rapid fire. 2 human ships immediately altered course, placing themselves between the enemy and the damaged Steadfast. They opened fire not to destroy but to distract, drawing enemy attention away from the crippled vessel. Meanwhile, the Vigilant and 2 sister ships accelerated toward the dying Tellian cruisers. Life signs detected on both Tellian ships. Heavy casualties. Sensors updated constantly. Approximately 200 survivors scattered across both vessels. "Launch all shuttles." "Medical teams go now." Foster switched channels. "Tellian survivors, this is Captain Foster of the UHSV Vigilant. Help is here. Get to the outer hull sections, we're coming for you." The next 20 minutes became controlled chaos. Human shuttles, tiny and vulnerable, darted through weapons fire to reach the Tellian cruisers. Enemy vessels turned their attention to these new targets, seeing easy kills. That was when Wraith understood the formation. The human warships had positioned themselves not to fight but to shield. Every enemy shot aimed at a medical shuttle hit a human vessel instead. They were using themselves as living barriers. The Vigilant shuddered as enemy fire struck repeatedly. Shields failed. Hull breaches opened on 3 decks. Atmosphere vented into space. Damage control teams to sections 4 and 5 seal those breaches. Foster never left his chair, even as the deck tilted beneath him. "How many survivors aboard?" 47 Tellians recovered. Shuttles making second runs, another impact. This time, critical systems failed. Lights flickered. Gravity generators struggled. "Engineering, I need those shields back." Nina's voice came through, strained but determined. "Working on it, Captain. Rerouting power from weapons. Do it. We're not here to shoot, we're here to save people." The Vigilant's weapons went dark. All that power fed into shields, into engines, into life support. The ship became a pure rescue platform, abandoning any pretense of combat capability. Wraith watched enemy vessels close in, seeing an easy target. But the other human ships adjusted position, still maintaining that protective screen. They fired constantly, not to destroy but to harass, to distract, to buy seconds. The Steadfast, crippled and helpless, used its remaining power to launch escape pods toward the other human vessels. Crew abandoning ship while their vessel continued to draw fire. "Steadfast is evacuating. All pods away." The communications officer looked stricken. Foster's jaw tightened. "Confirm all crew accounted for." "Confirmed." Captain Roberts was last to leave. On the display, the Steadfast took a final, massive hit. The destroyer broke apart in silence, pieces spinning into the dark. "All ships, we have what we came for. Execute withdrawal, maximum speed." Admiral Hayes's voice cut through the grief. "Don't let the Steadfast sacrifice be wasted." The human vessels turned as one, engines screaming. They fled, and Wraith felt shame watching warriors retreat. But then he looked at the sensor displays showing hundreds of rescued Tellians crowded into medical bays, wounded but alive. The enemy pursued for several minutes before breaking off, apparently satisfied with their destruction of the Tellian cruisers. The fleet limped back to human space. The Vigilance medical bay overflowed with casualties, both Tellian and human. Dr. Rothwell moved through the chaos with calm efficiency, directing treatment, stabilizing critical patients, making impossible decisions about who to treat first. Wraith found Captain Foster in his ready room hours later, staring at casualty reports: 23 dead from the Steadfast, 16 wounded across the fleet, 209 Tellians saved. Foster's voice was hollow. Is that a victory, Commander? 23 lives for 209? Your people died as warriors, Wraith offered, unsure how to comfort a human. My people died doing their jobs. They died in the back, in support roles, covering others while the real rescue happened. Foster looked up and Wraith saw tears the human didn't bother hiding. They died exactly where humans always position themselves. In the back. Ready to help, ready to sacrifice. I don't understand your species, Wraith admitted. You fight like demons but position like cowards. You win but don't seek glory. You sacrifice but call it duty. Foster stood slowly, moving to a viewport showing the damaged fleet. We sit in the back because when we sit in front, people die who don't need to. We learned that lesson on Earth. Learned it in blood across centuries of stupid, glorious charges that accomplished nothing but filling graves. He pressed one hand against the viewport. Someone has to be in position to help when things go wrong. Someone has to be ready to catch the falling, to shield the weak, to bring everyone home. He turned to face Wraith directly. You want to know why humans sit in the back? It's because we're strong enough to let others have the glory while we do what actually matters. For the first time since arriving, Wraith had no response. Recovery took 3 days. The human fleet withdrew to a forward outpost where repair crews worked around the clock. Wraith spent those days watching humans mourn their dead while simultaneously saving the living. The memorial service for the Steadfast crew was simple. No grand speeches about glorious sacrifice. No promises of vengeance. Captain Roberts, who survived the ship's destruction, stood before the assembled crew and spoke plainly. They did their jobs. They knew the risks. They positioned themselves where they could do the most good. And when that position became untenable, they made sure everyone else got out first. She paused, voice thick. That's what we do. That's what humans have always done. We take the positions nobody else wants and we hold them until everyone else is safe. Afterward, Foster invited Wraith to join him on a shuttle trip. The Admiral wants to see you. Apparently your reports back to the Draconer Empire have raised some questions. The journey to Admiral Hayes's command ship gave Wraith time to think. He had sent daily reports, each one more confused than the last. His Emperor wanted to know if humans were cowards or geniuses, weak or strong. Wraith still had no clear answer. Hayes received them in her personal office, a cramped space filled with actual paper books, an affectation most species had abandoned millennia ago. Commander Wraith, thank you for your service during the recent engagement. Captain Foster tells me you performed admirably. She gestured to seats. Please sit. We need to talk. Wraith lowered himself carefully into a chair designed for smaller frames. I did very little, Admiral. Your people did the fighting and the dying. You stayed at your post when many would have fled. You assisted medical teams despite having no training. You asked questions instead of making assumptions. Hayes smiled slightly. That's more than admirably. That's the beginning of understanding. I understand nothing, Wraith admitted. Your tactics contradict everything I know about warfare. You position for retreat before considering attack. You value preservation over victory. You sacrifice glory for survival. Hayes nodded slowly. Captain Foster, would you bring the archive files I prepared? Foster left and returned with a data crystal. Hayes inserted it into a holographic projector, and images filled the air between them. This is Earth, Commander. Our homeworld. The planet rotated slowly, blue and green and beautiful. For most of our history, we killed each other over resources, territory, ideology, religion, tribe, skin color, and 1,000 other stupid reasons. The images shifted to battlefields. Ancient humans in armor hacking at each other with primitive weapons. Then firearms. Then mechanized warfare. Then nuclear fire consuming cities. We nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times. Every generation thought they fought the war to end all wars. Every generation was wrong. Hayes's voice remained steady but sad. We learned warfare the hard way through mistakes written in billions of graves. New images appeared. Military formations charging into machine gun fire. Entire armies trapped and destroyed because commanders sought glory over tactics. Cities burned because defenders refused to retreat. We learned that brave charges get brave people killed. We learned that holding untenable positions for honor means nobody survives to fight tomorrow. We learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is step back, position yourself where you're most useful, and abandon the idea that being first makes you best. A particular battle filled the display. Wraith saw human soldiers surrounded, cut off, dying slowly. The Battle of Dunkirk during our Second World War. 300,000 soldiers trapped on a beach about to be captured or killed. Our fastest warships, our best troops, everyone was on the front lines fighting. Nobody was positioned to help. Hayes paused. So you know who saved them? Civilian boats, fishing vessels, pleasure craft, hundreds of small ships that had been sitting in the back, waiting in safety, able to respond because they weren't committed to the front lines. The display showed countless small boats ferrying soldiers to safety. That lesson burned itself into human consciousness. Someone needs to be in the back. Someone needs to be ready when the glorious front line collapses. Someone needs to be positioned to save people when the heroes die. More battles appeared, each showing the same pattern. Rear guards holding while others escaped. Support units becoming the difference between defeat and survival. Unglamorous positions saving armies. After we reached space, we had to relearn these lessons again. Early human colony ships put all their command staff, best equipment, and strongest fighters in the lead vessels. Made sense, right? Protect the front, lead from a position of strength. Hayes shook her head. Disaster. When lead ships hit unexpected hazards, entire colonies died because all their expertise and resources were destroyed in the first wave. Images of broken colony ships, frozen corpses drifting in space. So we changed. We put our strongest ships in the back, our best people in support roles. We designed our fleets assuming the front would fail, because assuming invulnerability is how you guarantee catastrophe. Wraith absorbed this, his warrior mind struggling with the concept. But surely sometimes aggressive forward positioning is correct? Sometimes, yes. We're not pacifists or cowards, Commander. When we need to charge, we charge. When we need to hold, we hold. Hayes leaned forward. But we never forget that glory is temporary and survival is what actually matters. We never forget that someone needs to be ready to pick up the pieces when everything goes wrong. Foster added, during the rescue operation, you saw us sacrifice the Steadfast. That was a forward vessel, positioned aggressively to draw fire. We put it there knowing it might be destroyed. But the medical ships, the support vessels, all our rescue capability stayed in the back where they could survive and do their jobs. The Steadfast died so others could live, Wraith said slowly. The Steadfast positioned itself where it was most useful. And yes, that cost lives. But those 23 deaths saved 209 Tellians plus, kept our rescue capability intact. Hayes pulled up casualty figures. If we had positioned our medical ships forward seeking glory, we would have lost them in the first exchange. Everyone would have died, Tellian and human alike. The logic was undeniable but alien. Draconair tactics emphasized strength, dominance, forward assault. The idea of deliberately taking what appeared to be weak positions went against every instinct. Hayes seemed to read his thoughts. Your people are magnificent warriors, Commander. The Draconair Empire has never lost a war, but you've also never had to rebuild from total defeat. You've never had your entire civilization nearly destroy itself. You've never learned that winning the battle means nothing if everyone dies in the process. She stood, moving to a window showing the damaged human fleet undergoing repairs. Humans sit in the back, because we remember what it's like to sit in the front and watch everyone behind us die. We remember charging forward for glory while our homes burned. We remember winning battles and losing everything that mattered. She glanced back at Wraith. We learned to measure victory not by enemies killed or territory gained, but by how many of our people come home alive. Wraith considered his own species' history. Draconair wars ended in glorious victory or honorable defeat. Civilians were protected, yes, but the military caste existed separately, living and dying by warrior codes that prized individual glory. Your entire species thinks like soldiers protecting civilians, he observed. Every human is a potential soldier, and every soldier remains a civilian in their heart, Foster replied. We don't separate the two. The person fixing engines is as important as the person firing weapons. The medic is as vital as the Marine. We all serve the same purpose, keeping each other alive. Hayes returned to her desk. Commander, your Emperor sent you here to determine if humanity's rear positioning indicates weakness. I want you to take a message back to him." She pulled up a star map showing human territory, modest compared to the Draconeer Empire but growing. "Tell him that humans will always sit in the back, not because we're weak, but because we're strong enough to abandon pride for practicality. Tell him that when the galaxy faces its next crisis, when the front lines collapse and glory fails, humanity will still be here, in the back. Ready to help, ready to save whoever we can." Wraith looked at the map, at the human territory that had grown steadily for 2 centuries, while other species fought for scraps at the front. "I will deliver your message, Admiral, though I suspect my Emperor will not understand it any better than I do." Hayes smiled. "Understanding takes time, Commander. You're already asking better questions than when you arrived. That's progress." Wraith had been preparing his departure report when the universe decided humanity's lessons weren't finished. The alert came simultaneously across every communication channel, every emergency frequency, every diplomatic network. Unknown hostile force had entered Council space through an unstable wormhole near the outer rim. Initial scout reports were fragmentary and terrifying. The enemy possessed technology that made current galactic weapons look primitive. Their ships moved faster, hit harder, and shrugged off counterattacks that should have been devastating. Within hours, 3 colony worlds went silent. Within a day, 2 Council defense fleets were destroyed utterly, their distress calls ending in static and screams. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. For the first time in 200 years, representatives abandoned their traditional seating arrangements. The innermost circles, usually reserved for the strongest military powers, were already being reconfigured into command centers. Humans still sat in the back. Wraith stood with the Draconeer delegation, watching holographic displays show the enemy's advance. 15 worlds evacuated, 6 fleets destroyed. The invaders weren't just attacking, they were systematically annihilating everything in their path. All military forces are ordered to form a defensive line at the barrier worlds, the Council Overseer announced. Every species with fleet capability will contribute vessels. This is an existential threat to all Council members. The Draconeer Emperor's representative, General Cross, stood immediately. The Draconeer Empire will lead the defense. Our dreadnoughts will form the front line. No enemy has broken Draconeer formation in 3 centuries. The Tellian ambassador rose next. Our heavy cruisers will support the Draconeer front. Together, we'll hold the line. Species after species pledged their forces, each claiming positions at the front of the formation. Glory and honor demanded they face the enemy directly, prove their courage, demonstrate their strength. Admiral Hayes sat quietly in the back row until everyone else had spoken. Then she stood, her voice cutting through the martial fervor. Humanity will provide support vessels, medical ships, supply carriers, and evacuation craft. We'll position in the rear, ready to assist damaged vessels and coordinate retreat if necessary. The chamber erupted. A Draconeer officer shouted, "Retreat? We will not retreat. This is a fight for survival." Hayes waited for silence. Every fight for survival needs someone positioned to save the survivors. Humanity will be in the back, doing what we do best. Wraith watched General Cross dismiss the human contribution with a wave. The humans would sit uselessly in the rear while real warriors did the fighting. The general's contempt was obvious. The fleet assembled over the next 2 days. It was the largest military gathering in galactic history. Draconeer dreadnoughts formed the front line, massive and intimidating. Behind them, Tellian cruisers, Varani battleships, and dozens of other species' finest warships. Millions of crew members, thousands of vessels, all preparing to face an enemy they barely understood. Humans positioned 40 ships at the very back of the formation. Medical vessels, supply freighters, repair craft, and a handful of combat frigates. The Vigilant was among them. Foster gave Wraith a choice. "You can transfer to a Draconeer dreadnought if you want, Commander. Be with your people on the front line." Wraith had thought about it. His place was with his species, with the warriors at the front where glory awaited. But something made him hesitate. "I will remain here," he said finally. "To complete my observation of human tactics," Foster smiled knowingly. "Of course, Commander." The enemy arrived without warning. One moment, the defensive line waited in tense silence. The next, space tore open and hostile vessels poured through like water from a broken dam. They were beautiful and terrible, ships that seemed to fold space around them. weapons that struck before defenders even registered targeting locks. The enemy didn't form formations or follow predictable tactics. They simply appeared, fired, and vanished, only to reappear somewhere else. The front line engaged immediately. Draconeer dreadnoughts opened fire with enough power to crack planets. Tellian cruisers launched fighter wings that darkened space. Every species threw everything they had at the invaders. It wasn't enough. The enemy's weapons cut through shields like they didn't exist. Hulls that should have taken hours to breach exploded in seconds. Ships that had never known defeat died before they could adjust tactics. Wraith watched from the Vigilance command deck as the Draconeer flagship, the Pride of Empire, took a direct hit. The dreadnought that had led his species' fleets for 50 years broke in half, spilling atmosphere and crew into space. Fleet-wide communication collapsing, the Vigilance communications officer reported. Too many simultaneous distress calls. Command structure is failing. On the displays, chaos spread through the defensive line. Ships tried to retreat but collided with vessels behind them. Coordinated formations dissolved into confusion. The enemy exploited every gap, every moment of disorder. Admiral Hayes's voice cut through the noise, calm and clear. All human vessels, activate emergency communication network. We're now fleet command by default. Foster looked at Wraith. This is what we trained for, not the glorious frontline battle, but the moment when everything goes wrong and someone needs to organize survival. Human ships, positioned safely in the rear, had survived the initial assault intact. Now they moved with practiced efficiency, creating order from chaos. All Council vessels, this is Admiral Hayes. Fall back to rally points Alpha through Delta. Human ships will provide screening and medical support. Repeat, fall back now. Some ships obeyed immediately. Others, pride wounded, tried to maintain their positions. They died quickly. The Tellian ambassador's vessel took critical damage, life support failing. The Vigilant moved immediately, closing distance despite the danger. Launch rescue shuttles. Get those survivors out. Foster never looked away from tactical displays. Engineering, reroute all weapons power to shields. We're not here to fight. Nina's voice came through clearly. Already done, Captain. Shields at maximum. We can take a beating. The Vigilant positioned itself between the dying Tellian vessel and the nearest enemy ship. Hostile fire slammed into human shields, each impact shaking the frigate. But the shields held, and human shuttles darted through the carnage to reach survivors. All across the battlefield, human vessels performed similar maneuvers. They weren't fighting the enemy. They were fighting to save everyone else. Wraith found himself working alongside Dr. Rothwell in the medical bay as Tellian survivors arrived. Massive reptilian forms with catastrophic injuries burned and bleeding and dying. Apply pressure here, Rothwell directed, thrusting a medical device into Wraith's hands. Don't let him bleed out. Wraith obeyed, his warrior training adapting to this new kind of battle. He saved the Tellian, then moved to help another and another. Around him, human medics worked with desperate efficiency, treating anyone who reached them regardless of species. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Council's defensive line collapsed completely. 3/4 of the assembled fleet was destroyed or disabled. The enemy had achieved total tactical victory, but 40,000 survivors crowded into human medical bays, pulled from dying ships by human rescue teams. Another 100,000 reached rally points that human vessels had designated and defended. Damaged ships limped to safety behind human screening vessels. The enemy, satisfied with their destruction, withdrew back through their wormhole. The immediate threat passed, leaving only wreckage and trauma behind. Admiral Hayes coordinated the aftermath from her command ship, directing medical resources, organizing temporary shelter, managing a refugee crisis that involved dozens of species. Wraith found her 12 hours later, still working despite obvious exhaustion. Admiral, the Draconeer Emperor wishes to speak with you. Hayes nodded, straightening her uniform. The holographic communication activated, showing the Emperor in his throne room surrounded by advisors. Wraith had never seen his leader look diminished before. Admiral Hayes, the Draconeer Empire acknowledges its debt to humanity. You saved thousands of our people. We did our jobs, Emperor. Nothing more. You sat in the back while we sought glory in the front, and when the front collapsed, you were positioned to save us. The Emperor's voice carried bitter understanding. We dismissed your contribution as cowardice. We were wrong. Hayes shook her head. You weren't wrong to fight, Emperor. Someone needed to engage the enemy to buy time. You did that. We just positioned ourselves to handle what came after. Your people suffered fewer losses but saved more lives than any other species. The Emperor leaned forward. Teach us, Admiral. Teach us why you sit in the back. Around the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. The species that had mocked human rear positioning now begged to understand it. The tactics that seemed like cowardice had proven to be the only thing standing between survival and total annihilation. Wraith looked at the rescued crews filling every available space on human vessels. He thought about the pride of Empire breaking apart, about his own escape only because a human ship was positioned to retrieve him. I understand now, he told Foster quietly. You sit in the back because when everyone else falls, someone needs to still be standing. Someone needs to be ready to catch them. Foster gripped his shoulder, the gesture now familiar and welcome. Now you're getting it, Commander. The Galactic Council chamber looked different now. Repair crews had removed the elaborate tiered seating that once proclaimed military hierarchy. In its place, a simple circular arrangement allowed all species to see each other as equals. But the most significant change was invisible, written in the eyes of every representative who had survived the catastrophe. 3 months had passed since the invasion. The enemy had not returned, but everyone knew they would. The first attack had been a probe, a test. The next would be worse. Wraith stood before the assembled council, no longer as an observer, but as an official representative of the Draconair Empire. His emperor had granted him a new title, Ambassador of Tactical Reform. His mission was to help implement what everyone now called the Human Protocol. The changes are simple in concept but difficult in execution, Wraith began, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Every fleet must maintain rear positioning vessels. Every formation must include support elements. Every battle plan must account for retreat, rescue, and recovery. General Cross, who had lost 3/4 of his command in the battle, stood to support him. The Draconair Empire has begun restructuring our entire military doctrine. We are training our finest warriors not for frontal assault, but for rearguard operations. It goes against every instinct, every tradition, but we will do it because humanity showed us the wisdom of such positioning. The Tellian ambassador added, our heavy cruisers are being redesigned with improved rescue capabilities. We can no longer afford to build vessels that excel only at destruction. We must build ships that can also save lives. Species after species reported similar changes. The galaxy was learning slowly and painfully what humans had known for centuries. Admiral Hayes listened quietly from her seat. Not in the front, not in the back, but among equals. When the formal reports concluded, she stood. I want to be clear about something. The human protocol isn't about making everyone fight like humans. It's about ensuring someone is always positioned to help when things go wrong. She gestured to the various representatives. The Draconair should still lead charges when charges are needed. The Tellians should still provide heavy firepower. The Varani should still coordinate fleet movements. These are your strengths, and we need them. She paused, making sure everyone understood. But we also need someone ready to pick up the pieces. Someone positioned to coordinate when command falls. Someone ready to save lives when glory fails. That's what sitting in the back really means. It means being strong enough to abandon pride for practicality. The next speaker surprised everyone. Overseer Milren, the bureaucrat who had managed council protocols for decades, floated to the center of the chamber. I have watched this council for longer than most of you have lived. I have seen species rise and fall based on their military philosophies. The jellyfish-like creature's tentacles moved with unusual emotion. What happened 3 months ago should have destroyed the council. We lost 3/4 of our combined fleet. By all historical precedent, such a defeat should have shattered our alliance. Milren turned slowly, addressing everyone. But it didn't, because one species was positioned to prevent total collapse. One species had planned for disaster and prepared to handle it. Humanity's rear positioning saved not just lives, but the entire council structure itself. The overseer pulled up statistics. Before the battle, human fleet contribution was measured at 8% of total council military power. 40 ships out of 500, yet human vessels recovered 73% of all survivors. Human coordination preserved 81% of damaged ships that would otherwise have been lost. Human medical facilities treated 62% of all casualties. The numbers were undeniable. Humanity's small contribution, positioned in the rear, had accomplished more than the entire front line combined. I propose formal recognition, Milren announced. Humanity should be granted permanent Council security coordination status. In any future military operation, human forces will maintain command authority over rescue, retreat, and recovery operations. The vote was unanimous. After the session, Wraith walked with Captain Foster through the repaired station corridors. The Vigilant was docked nearby, undergoing upgrades funded by a grateful council. Your people changed the galaxy, Wraith observed. In 3 months, you've restructured military thinking that stood for thousands of years. Foster shook his head. We didn't change anything. We just survived long enough for others to learn what we already knew. Pain is a great teacher, Commander. The galaxy just paid tuition in blood. They reached an observation deck overlooking the docking bays. Dozens of ships floated there, representing every Council species. All of them now showed modifications based on human design principles. Improved rescue systems, better damage control, enhanced medical facilities. I'm returning to the Draconeer Empire tomorrow, Wraith said. The Emperor wants me to oversee our military restructuring personally. You'll be good at it. You've learned to ask the right questions, Foster smiled. Plus, you saved 17 lives in our medical bay during the battle. That makes you an honorary human in my book. Wraith's scales rippled with what humans would recognize as embarrassment. I merely followed Dr. Rothwell's directions. You stayed when you could have fled. You helped when you could have hidden. That's the essence of what we're trying to teach. Foster extended his hand again, that gesture of human friendship. You understand now why we sit in the back? Wraith gripped the offered hand firmly. I understand that sitting in the back isn't about position. It's about responsibility. It's about being ready when others need you. It's about having the strength to do the unglamorous work that actually matters. Exactly. And now you can teach that to your people. The next morning, Wraith prepared to depart on a Draconeer transport. The Vigilance crew assembled to see him off, an honor they apparently extended to friends. Nina Okafor gave him a small token, a piece of the Vigilance original engine housing. So you remember that strength isn't always about going forward. Sometimes it's about keeping the engine running when everyone else is fighting. Dr. Rothwell handed him a medical scanner, in case you need to save someone. Position doesn't matter if you're not equipped to help. Captain Foster gave him a data crystal. Every human battle from the past 1,000 years. Study them. You'll see the pattern. We learn to sit in the back because we remember what happens when nobody does. Admiral Hayes made the journey to see him off personally. Commander Wraith, you came here to investigate weakness. What will you report to your Emperor? Wraith considered carefully. I will report that humans are the strongest species in the galaxy. Not because of weapons or tactics, but because you're strong enough to do what others won't. You're strong enough to let others have glory while you do what's necessary. You're strong enough to sit in the back. Hayes smiled. And what will you do, Commander? I will teach my people to be that strong. I will show them that the back row is where true warriors position themselves. Wraith looked at each human present, and when the enemy returns, the Draconeer Empire will be ready. We'll fight at the front, yes, but we'll also have forces positioned in the back, ready to help, ready to save, ready to do what humans have done for us. 6 months later, the enemy returned in greater numbers. They poured through the wormhole expecting to find the same disorganized resistance, the same glory-seeking formations that had collapsed so easily before. Instead, they found a galaxy that had learned humanity's lessons. The front line held longer because warriors knew retreat wasn't shameful. Damaged ships reached safety because rescue vessels waited in position. Casualties survived because medical facilities stood ready in the rear. Communications remained functional because humans coordinated backup networks. The battle was still brutal. The enemy was still more advanced. But this time, when the front line buckled, there were forces positioned to catch it. When ships fell, there were others ready to save the crew. When glory failed, there were humans in the back doing the unglamorous work of keeping everyone alive. Wraith commanded a Draconeer rearguard squadron, positioned behind the main battle line. When the flagship took damage, his ships moved immediately to provide cover. When evacuation began, his forces coordinated the retreat. When the enemy tried to pursue and finish off wounded vessels, Draconeer warriors held the line long enough for everyone to escape. 23 Draconeer ships were destroyed in that holding action. But 12,000 lives reached safety because someone was positioned in the back, ready to help, strong enough to sacrifice glory for purpose. After the battle, Wraith found himself in the Vigilance medical bay again. this time treating human casualties alongside his own people. The galaxy had changed. Species that once fought for front row seats now understood the honor of the back row. Captain Foster, wounded but alive, found him there. "Still sitting in the back, Commander?" Foster asked with a pained smile. Wraith looked around at the rescued crews, the saved lives, the survivors who existed because someone had been positioned to help them. "Always, Captain. The back is where the real work happens. The back is where warriors become something greater than warriors. The back is where humanity showed us what true strength means." Foster nodded slowly. "Welcome to the back, Commander Wraith. Welcome home." The Galactic Council chamber had changed again. Now the seating arrangement was completely flat. No tiers, no hierarchy. But anyone watching noticed something interesting. The species with the longest military traditions, the ones who had fought for front positions for thousands of years, now competed for seats near the back. Not because they were cowards, not because they had grown weak, but because they had finally learned what humans knew all along. The strongest position isn't at the front where everyone can see you. It's in the back where you can see everyone else, where you can be ready when they fall, where you can catch them, save them, and bring them home. That's why humans sit in the back. And now so does everyone else who understands what true strength means.